tonight, the complete siege of Gaza is ordered by Israel. Electricity, food, water and fuel to be cut off. As Israeli strikes continue tonight, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says retaliation has only just begun. Well, back here in the UK, the government holds a Cobra meeting and promises to support Israel with military equipment and intelligence. And here at Labour conference in Liverpool, the party reiterates it stands behind the Israeli people. All that and more will be joined by Sonia Sodha and Tryl, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Sophy Ridge, we're live from Liverpool for the Labour Party conference, and this is the Politics Hub. Good evening. Now, we're here in Liverpool tonight, and it is an important conference for the Labour Party. We'll be talking later on the show about the pitch from Rachel Reeves, the woman who could well be Chancellor after the election. But honestly, the last few days, I felt pretty shaken, like I know you will have as well, by some of the stories coming out of Israel. 260 people gunned down at a peace festival. A young woman from Germany, lifeless, half naked, in the back of a truck. Her family knew it was their daughter, their sister, because of her tattoos. I mean, can you even imagine? Two little girls, Rav and Aziz, they were 5 and 3, just babies really, captured, believed to have been taken to Gaza. It's pretty hard to forget their stories. And I think another reason that we all feel shaken right now is because we know this is going to have some very big consequences, and they've already started. Israel has cut off water and electricity to Gaza. 560 people killed in retaliatory strikes, that's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. 560. Let that sink in. And we don't know what the full consequences will be, but we know this is a moment of maximum uncertainty, of fear, of danger. You know, one of those moments when you can feel the world turning slightly on its axis. Well, on the show tonight, we're going to be bringing you the latest on the war and what it means. And our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, has this first report.
Midday in one of Israel's biggest cities, 4 cars ignited by a Hamas rocket. Fiery inferno sending up thick black smoke. A 50-year-old Israeli woman died in the attack. Hai Havi came out onto his balcony to witness these scenes he photographed. His neighbourhood up in flames. What did you think?
They came here. That's what I thought. Because, you know, I've been hearing the stories from everything that's happening more on the border, and it was horrifying.
Israel has been menaced all day by rockets, from Jerusalem to Ashdod to Tel Aviv. It doesn't matter how effective Israel's anti-missile defence systems are, these rockets are still getting through in their scores. And what's terrifying for the Israelis is the random, sporadic nature of these attacks. They have no idea where or when they're going to fall next, which is why, from what we're seeing, these communities are emptying out people, if they can, fleeing to different parts of Israel. The Israeli military is retaliating, hammering Gaza with artillery and airstrikes, with more than 1,000 targets hit. Medics there say more than 400 are now dead, among them more than 90 children. Israel's language has become as uncompromising as its tactics.
We are imposing a complete siege on Gaza. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals and we are acting accordingly.
There's tension on Israel's northern border with Lebanon too. Israel is sending reinforcements, troops and armour in case its Lebanese enemy Hezbollah is tempted to open a second front. Israel says its assault from the air on Gaza will soon be followed up by a ground offensive. Are its enemies waiting for that moment to escalate this war? Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Ashdod.
Dominic Wacom reporting there, and the Prime Minister has convened an emergency Cobra meeting this afternoon. That came as the fighting continued on both sides of the border. He'd already broken the unwritten rule that party leaders stay out of the news during rival conferences by holding a PM Connect in Nottingham, taking questions from businesses on HS2. And at that event, he had this to say about the situation in Israel.
This is not a time for equivocation. Right? We should just be straightforward in what's happening here, and that's that Hamas and the people that support Hamas are fully responsible for appalling acts of terrorism. We should call it out for what it is. Citizens of Israel are being murdered, innocent people have been kidnapped, including children. Obviously, that's shocking and it's horrifying, and they should be held accountable for that. And what I've said to the Israeli Prime Minister is that we will provide all the support that they need to make sure that Israel can defend itself against these kinds of attacks.
The Prime Minister there talking about providing support to Israel. Well, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, also condemned those attacks, and he backed Israel's right to defend itself.
Labour utterly condemns Hamas's appalling attack on Israel. There is never a justification for terrorism. Labour stands firmly in support of Israel's right to defend itself, rescue hostages and protect its citizens. The hostages so cruelly taken, including children, should be released immediately, and Hamas's indiscriminate attacks set back the cause of peace. Both Israelis and Palestinians paying a terrible price. There will not be a just and lasting peace until Israel is secure, Palestine is a sovereign state, and both Israelis and Palestinians enjoy security, dignity, and human rights.
Now, the consensus from across the political establishment to condemn the attacks comes against a backdrop of mounting community tensions in the United Kingdom. A little earlier this evening, a vigil was held at Downing Street, and the organisers felt the need to be explicit that there would be both Community Security Trust, that's a group that provides security to the Jewish community, and also a police presence at the event. Now, a little earlier, I spoke to the former Labour MP, Luciana Berger, who resigned from the party in 2019 over anti-Semitism, and she rejoined this year after an invitation and apology from Keir Starmer. It's an emotional moment, of course, for Luciana. It's a difficult interview for her to do. She knows a lot of those communities involved. I did begin by asking her for her reaction to that Hamas terror attack.
I mean, it's been very, very difficult to see the scenes of what's been happening in Israel since Saturday. I was there just a couple of months ago. I was on the southern border with Gaza. I was at a kibbutz community, Kfar Aza, and as of this morning, that community was still in a hostage situation. And I don't know if the people that I met and spent time with, whose shops I went to, whose homes I saw just a couple of months ago, I don't know who is still alive. It's extraordinarily difficult, and the brutal and horrific scenes we've seen of people killed in their homes, people dragged from their beds and taken hostage, taken over the border into Gaza, babies, children, pensioners. It doesn't bear thinking about it, and I was just appalled and shocked to see the figures of the loss of life. It's been the greatest attack on the Jewish community in the wake of the end of the Holocaust. It's really, really horrific scenes.
It's like you say, I've actually found it really difficult to look at some of the stories that have been coming out. Little children missing, babies, like you say, reports of 260 people murdered at a festival for peace. I mean, how have the last few days felt for yourself, someone who's Jewish, someone who's spent time in this community before?
It's really hard. It's really hard to to know it's happened, let alone see the horrific, brutal scenes, to know that people I know and love are being called up and now having to be taken out of the reserve and now serving in the army, to know that people have been taken over 100 hostages. And there are so many things that have been put on social media by the Hamas terrorists, the perpetrators of these horrific acts, that people won't have even seen because they are so brutal. We can't broadcast them on our television screens. A lot of it is on various social media outlets, and I'd urge people to have a look at how horrific and brutal it is, and to see the scenes of people who'd gone to a peace festival, a peace music festival, that were reveling into the night, young people who'd saved their money up, who were looking so forward to just coming together and just enjoying music for peace, seeing them gunned down, and to know that at least 260 bodies have been recovered from that event.
We have seen some pro-Palestine protests, for example. We know that the police have even stepped up patrols because they're worried about anti-Semitic attacks, even though, of course, it's the Jewish people who were targeted in the first place here. How's that felt like for you?
It's really serious, and whenever events happen in the Middle East, sadly, they do spill over onto the streets of our country and other countries too. I live in North London, just down the road from where I live. Last night, a kosher eatery that I go to for my takeaway was vandalised, and graffiti was put in the bridge just above it. This is happening today in the UK. And
does it make you feel safe? Do you feel safe?
I'm really concerned, and I know there are many people that are concerned. There are, we have in this country a formidable organisation called the Community Security Trust that monitors anti-Jewish hatred and anti-Semitism, and does everything possible to ensure that Jewish places of worship, Jewish schools are protected. My children go to Jewish schools, and there's a lot of concern around the safety of whether it's young Jewish people or people going about their Jewish way of life going to synagogues. It's a very serious concern. And I just hope that people speak out about it, that people acknowledge that there can never be any justification for the sheer brutality that we've seen. This is the action of a terrorist organisation that since its creation in 1988 has been committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. And this goes far wider than just the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We saw scenes in the Iranian parliament of Iranian parliamentarians celebrating these brutal and horrific attacks. We saw the Iranians launch fireworks in support of and celebration of what had happened. And we understand that Iran has supported Hamas and Hezbollah that have attempted to attack Israel from the north in the last couple of days, and no doubt before that. So this goes far wider. This speaks to the issue of Iranian-sponsored anti-Jewish hatred.
Do you see the hand of Iran in this?
Absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely. And why? Because one of the reasons that many analysts are saying is because Israel was on the cusp of normalising relations with Saudi Arabia with the Abraham Accords. It was on the path to signing a deal, and this has been Iran's mechanism and way to try and frustrate that. So there are greater issues in Middle East politics at play here. That doesn't in any way detract from the brutal events that we have seen unfold in Israel over the last few days.
We've heard a lot from politicians in the last few days that Israel has a right to defend itself.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, we've had Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party. We've had the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy. We've heard it from the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, make it very clear that there can be no equivocation in this, that what has happened has been horrific, brutal and wrong, and that in the wake of an attack, Israel, like any other country, has a right to defend herself.
I guess I'm just trying to work out what a right to defend itself looks like in practical terms. There's been reports, for example, recently that Israel bombed a hospital, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, saying after the escalation, Israeli forces struck the enclave's Gaza's Indonesian hospital and an ambulance in southern Gaza. One nurse killed, one ambulance driver killed, several injured. Healthcare facilities can't become targets. I mean, I guess some people have the fear about what it means if Israel does defend itself and how far that's able to go.
This is an ugly situation. And who is suffering the most? It's innocent people on both sides, Israeli and Palestinian people. Israel as a country has lost the greatest number of people on one day in any day since the end of the Holocaust. Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world, and to engage in combat in that area is incredibly difficult.
I just want to put to you Jeremy Corbyn's comments, who's been around conference. He was asked if he would condemn the attacks by Hamas, and he said, "I don't support any attacks, therefore I criticise them all." And then he also went on to say the way to end the terrible situation in Israel and Palestine is to end the occupation of Palestine by Israel. And there will be some people at this conference who agree with him.
Well, let's be very clear, Jeremy Corbyn's not at this conference. He's at an alternative conference down the road in a community centre. He's not within the parameters or the confines of the Labour Party, and he doesn't sit today as a Labour MP, and he's not going to be standing as a Labour candidate at the next general election. So he is not in any way a representative of the Labour Party when he makes those remarks, and those remarks are wrong. This is not new remarks, this is not a surprise. Jeremy Corbyn is unable to call out Hamas for what it is. It's a terrorist organisation that has engaged itself in the most brutal and horrific of attacks in the last few days. And shame on Jeremy Corbyn for not calling it out for what it is.
Luciana Berger there talking to me a little earlier today. And honestly, it does feel quite strange to be talking about anything other than the events that we've seen in Israel and Gaza today. And we are going to be coming back to that, of course, later in the programme. But today was also a big day for the Labour Party here in Liverpool. It was meant to be the day that the party was talking about the economy. The Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, addressed conference and was keen to portray herself as the woman who would have an iron grip on the public finances. She promised to fight the next election on the economy and to start a war on waste and inefficiency. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been crunching the numbers behind the politics.
A Shadow Chancellor coming out of the shadows. 3 elections ago, David Cameron warned of chaos under Ed Miliband. Today, Rachel Reeves turned the tables.
If you, like me, believe that it is time to put security first and reject the risk of 5 more years of chaos and decline, you can never trust the Tories with our economy ever again.
Her plan, more investment and, she says, an iron grip on the public finances.
You cannot tax and spend your way to economic growth. The lifeblood of a growing economy is business investment. It is investment that allows businesses to expand, create jobs and compete with international rivals, with new plants, factories and research labs coming to Britain, not France or Germany or America.
The messaging could hardly be any clearer. The Conservatives want to cancel big infrastructure projects. Labour wants to build. The Conservatives want to row back on net zero. Labour wants a green industrial revolution. The Conservatives are tired. Labour is energised.
And following the speech, a surprise endorsement.
It's beyond time to put her ideas and energy into action.
The former Bank of England governor isn't the only leading economic figure taking Labour seriously.
Today we heard the Shadow Chancellor talk about business investment being front and centre of their vision for the UK economy, and I think that was very encouraging for many businesses in the room to hear.
There's about twice as many business engagements this year as there was in the last conference. I mean, it's substantially bigger.
The slogan from Labour is "Get Britain Building Again." On the other side of town, they're doing precisely that, but it's tough. This project was approved when interest rates were rock bottom. Now they're painfully high.
There's been lots of instability over that time, and we need to get back to being able to plan where rents are going long term, what capital subsidy is available over the long term, but also capacity in the system to deliver things. Planning, which Rachel Reeves mentioned this morning, we need enough resource to make the likes of the scheme behind me here.
The funny thing about the noises from Labour today is that we've actually heard something like this before from Boris Johnson's Conservatives. Building, investing, net zero. Even as the Conservatives retreated from this territory, Labour has moved back in. Ed Conway, Sky News in Liverpool.
Well, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, joins us now. What was your big takeaway from the speech today from Rachel Reeves?
Well, it was a very strong, authoritative speech, but it also showed the ambition that we have in the Labour Party for transforming the country, for getting Britain building again and moving the dial on the economy so that people start to feel that they have more pounds in their pockets to be able to go about their lives in a more secure way. And I think that will show for many people across the country the ambition that we have for Britain.
She said a Labour government will not waver from the ironclad fiscal rules. So do you guys at the Treasury basically just spend your whole time saying no, no, no to all the spending requests from your shadow cabinet colleagues?
Well, what do we mean by fiscal rules? I mean, we essentially mean two things. One, that we will not borrow money for the day-to-day bills, so running our public services. That means that you have to say no if people want to borrow money, but actually the big question is about reform. So how do you deliver health, education, policing in a better way for people? But what we've also heard a lot today from Rachel Reeves' speech about is our willingness to invest with business in the infrastructure that the country needs.
So there would be, you're prepared to borrow for investment?
So what Rachel said was that where we will invest, it's alongside the private sector. For every £1 of public sector investment, we are expecting to see at least £3 from the private sector.
You were saying there that, look, for day-to-day spending, it's about reform rather than about spending more money. I'm just wondering, you know, it feels a little bit like your message ahead of the election is the schools are not good enough, the hospitals are not good enough, these need to be improved dramatically. But don't worry, we're not going to borrow any more money to do it, and we're also not going to put up taxes. I mean, it feels a bit like, you know, the sort of Santa Claus of politics here. You're just promising all these presents, no one's going to have to pay for them.
Well, it's not quite right. I mean, there are some immediate challenges.
Not quite right.
Well, there are some immediate challenges that we would inherit because of the mess of this and the state of the country. That's why we've said that we would change the non-dom tax status to raise, for the health service, for example, £1.6 billion to deal with the backlog, to invest in technology, get people's diagnosis sped up. That's why we've talked about how we're going to put VAT on private school fees, to put more money straight into the education system.
This is like £4 billion, roughly.
That's a very big number. That's a very big number.
It's not that big number,
It is a very big number, £4 billion.
But if you're looking at if you're talking about being a transformative government,
yes,
like you said, you know, people will be looking to a Labour government saying, we trust you guys to transform public services, and you're talking about, you know, £4 billion here and there.
We have got to get out of this narrative that just spending more is going to transform the country. You have to modernise and reform public services. They are not good enough. They're not good enough for public sector workers. They're not good enough for people that rely on public services. So we have to modernise and transform the way that we deliver them so that they are better and in the long run cost less to run. So you can put money in to deal with immediate problems. £1 billion, I'm sorry, is a very large number, and we will be doing that to take immediate action coming into government if we win the next election.
I guess my point is just, do you need to pitch roll a bit more about, like you say, the difficulty of the situation that you're going to inherit when you come in? The public finances are in a very difficult state.
Well, that's why the fiscal
rules... I feel that people are perhaps not really realising what a Labour government would look like.
Well, listen to Rachel Reeves' speech today. I mean, that's why she was saying there'll be ironclad discipline on how we are spending money because of the inheritance being so difficult. And Keir Starmer and Rachel, I and others have said that, look, things are not going to be easy because of the mess that we would be inheriting at the next election. But we've also set out how we think we can transform the country. That is a message of hope and opportunity about taking our future back in this country.
You've got quite a big job going forward, right? You're effectively reviewing all big infrastructure spending, right?
Well, that's one of my jobs, yes.
Yeah. That's going to take quite a lot of time, though.
Yes, but we've got to be able to deliver big infrastructure more effectively in this country. HS2 has been a big debate. It's been a complete mess under the Conservatives. But as Rachel said in her speech, the UK is a very bad place now to build infrastructure compared to other countries in Europe and in the United States. So we have to be able to improve that system. And so one of the jobs I have is to be about reviewing that infrastructure process so that we can deliver things on time and more effectively across the country.
I was sitting here listening to Rachel Reeves' speech alongside my colleague Beth Rigby, who said she thought it sounded almost as if she could be, you know, the next leader, future leader, she thought after the speech. What do you think of that, Rachel Reeves?
Rachel and Keir have a very strong partnership right at the centre of the Labour Party, and if we win the election, they're going to have a very strong partnership at the centre of government. And, you know, as Rachel's deputy in the Treasury, Keir has made it very clear to colleagues across government that Labour policy has to be signed off by the Treasury team in line with our fiscal rules, and that relationship is very strong and will continue to be so.
I want to talk a bit about the situation that we're seeing in Israel and Gaza now, and we heard from Luciana Berger earlier. She spoke very powerfully about the single biggest loss of life for the Jewish community since the Holocaust. What's your reaction to the events that we've seen?
I mean, it's horrifying, isn't it? And deeply troubling and disturbing, and that's even for those of us that have no personal or family connections to the area. So I probably can't even imagine how colleagues like Luciana and others must feel when they know people that are in these circumstances. It's horrifying, and it's also entirely unacceptable. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. What they did was entirely unacceptable, and Israel has a right to defend itself. But
what does that mean, Israel has a right to defend itself? How far does that go?
Well, when you're defending yourself, it should be proportionate and based on international law, but Israel has to defend itself. It was under attack from a terrorist organisation. It's had to respond to that, and that's the right thing to do. If something similar would happen in the UK, we would have to respond in entirely the same way, and that's why we have expressed our support for Israel and the right to defend herself. It's why we had a minute's silence today on the floor of Conference Hall here, because of the tragedy about the events that are unfolding.
You said it should be a proportionate response. Water's been cut off to Gaza as well as electricity. 560 people reportedly killed in retaliatory strikes. Is that, in your view, a proportionate response?
Well, you know, situations of war are always deeply troubling in these circumstances. We obviously want to get to a position of peace, but we will do so when Hamas stops attacking Israel. And until they stop doing that, until the situation is under control, Israel has to be able to respond.
The EU has halted aid to Palestine. Do you think the UK should be doing the same?
You know, there will be...
I know it's not your brief, but these are big...
Sure. I'm happy to answer the question. Of course, there will be civilians who will be affected that will need access to humanitarian aid. And it's right that, you know, we and our partners provide support to those people who are stuck in the middle of this. I'm sure the people who are fleeing these events on either side of the border don't want Hamas to be undertaking these terrorist attacks in Israel. And that's why we want to get to a position of peace as quickly as possible.
It's such a difficult... such an appalling story. The stories coming out and the individuals and the civilians involved, it's really is a difficult thing for us to be talking about and for us to be covering, let alone the people living through it. It also feels like globally it's a period of kind of danger, of unpredictability. How worried are you about kind of what's happening geopolitically?
Well, of course, the UK and its allies need to be able to coordinate their responses, whether it's on aid or in its support for Israel, to bring this situation to an end as quickly as possible. And that's the aim here, right? There may be politics afterwards about what happens in the face of these attacks and how Israel has to continue to defend itself in the future, the way that terrorist organisations like Hamas are dealt with, probably looking at sources of funding and support that those organisations might have had. But I think given what's unfolding at the moment, those conversations are probably for another day. At the moment, we just have to try to keep people affected in our prayers and our thoughts and hope that this can be resolved as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for being on the programme. That was Darren Jones there talking to us about the Chancellor's speech, Shadow Chancellor's speech, I should say, and also, of course, the unfolding situation in Israel and Gaza. Still to come on the Politics Hub. All smiles from Rachel Reeves as she tells the RAPS conference that she'll be the Iron Chancellor who will get the UK economy back on track. Can Labour fight the coming election on the economy? We'll debate.
There is an invasion taking place across Ukraine. How long this will go on, nobody knows.
You can hear substantial shelling and rocket fire. There are civilians at the end of that.
It's a big fight. We might even be on the front line.
How are you feeling?
Strong. We run looking for cover. We just can't believe we're alive.
We'll fight Russia in the forests, the fields and shores of this land.
This is an absolutely incredible scene. There are dozens of people like this.
big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent, and this is where I grew up. We can reveal that the driver who hit Harry Dunn is 42-year-old Anne Sakoulas.
Just met the president and we never thought we'd get this far.
This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
I never knew they would make it. It's amazing.
Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Hello and welcome back to the Politics Hub. We're here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference and lots to discuss with our guests. The columnist and writer Sonia Sodha and the UK director of More in Common, Luke Tryl. We'll be talking Gaza, of course, later on the programme. But first, let's discuss that speech by the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, shall we? Sonia, what did you make of the pitch by Rachel Reeves today?
Well, I think it was very much in line with what we were led to expect she'd be saying. So it was kind of a tough speech for her party. You know, there was a real emphasis on tight fiscal rules, on not making unfunded spending commitments. And then there was a nice little surprise at the end where they played a video and former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney said, we really, you know, it's beyond time that we should be backing some of this, which I think is a really huge boost to have a former governor of the Bank of England who was thought of as a close ally of George Osborne. So I think it is what's expected. I think it went down very well in the hall, as I'm sure you've been hearing from other people. You had Labour delegates, clapping the idea of fiscal rectitude, which I think Rachel Reeves will be very pleased with. I think the tension for the party, though, and certainly I've been seeing this come out at some of the fringe events I've been speaking at, is that there isn't much money to go around. What money there will be needs to come from growth. I think the issue is for the party, when it comes to schools, hospitals, can you really deliver that growth without putting a bit more money into the health service and the education system?
I think it's true, and we heard that a little bit from Darren Jones, didn't we? He was saying, look, don't worry, you can reform. It's about reform, not just pouring more money in. It's like, well, I'm sure that is true, but reform takes a while to cut through. And you do get a sense, don't you, that people will perhaps be expecting more of a transformation, I guess, under public services under a Labour government.
Absolutely, and there's no doubt that Labour, I think they've nailed the fiscal discipline point. If you look at the polls now, they're very clearly more trusted on the economy, and clearly, I understand, they want to reinforce that. They want to show that the UK would be safe in their hands, and particularly, I think, after the mini-budget and everything that happened last year, the public will be reassured by that. I think the challenge now is, given the public think that Britain is so broken, that so much isn't working, they also want to hear what would Labour do differently and how would it do it differently. I'm not sure we got enough of that today to reassure people that Labour has a plan to deal with those very big issues which people are talking about in focus groups and in the polls.
What kind of issues are people talking about then?
It's
Like
the inability to get a GP appointment, that they can't trust a train to get them to work anymore, that, you know, or they go to the supermarket and butter costs £5 now. It's those sorts of things. And, you know, discipline is important, and clearly there was a job to do correcting from 2019 when Labour lost a lot of credibility with that sort of wish list manifesto. And I worry now that unless in the next year they switch to, this is our positive offer, the public are going to go, we're not getting it from the Tories, but we're not getting it from Labour either.
I think that's a really fair challenge. What I would say, though, is I think there are some policy areas where they've been trying to hit a sweet spot, which is to sort of announce a policy that gives a sense of what Labour would be like, but without spending too much money. So I think actually, if you look at education, for example, breakfast clubs for every primary school child, that's a really smart policy. It doesn't cost very much money. It's really effective. It makes sure kids start their school day well fed, and it really helps parents with childcare. So it's kind of like a no-brainer policy. The tricky thing is finding more policies like that, but they have got a few areas like that where I think their policies do shine.
What does the polling show on this as well? I was quite struck by you saying there that, look, yeah, Labour are more trusted in the economy. That's what the polls say now. It feels like that's actually quite a big sort of moment.
It is a big moment, and it goes hand in hand with a shift in public thinking during the pandemic, which was, if the government needs to spend money, it can do. You remember 2010, there was always that analogy with a household, and you can't spend more than you are bringing in. That has definitely shifted. And if you look at the polling now, there is much more appetite for investment to put into public services. And, you know, part of that is, you know, say that people think, well, the government clearly can spend when it wants to, but it's also a sense that, look, people just see, you know, so their parks, the police, hospitals, doctors feeling so run down, they want more going in.
Can I just chat about Rachel Reeves to you, Sonia? It feels to me like at the minute she is a kind of one of the powerhouses of the Labour Party. You got that sense, didn't you, there in the speech? She's almost like side by side with Keir Starmer.
It's a very close relationship, and I don't think we've seen a relationship this close since, you know, the days of actually Cameron and Osborne in opposition, Blair and Brown. They are completely on message with each other, and one of the reasons why it's such a powerful position in Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, and if they win in Starmer's cabinet, is because she has the power to say yay or nay to other colleagues in the shadow cabinet to any policy announcement that might cost money.
Feels like a lot of nays, more nays than yays,
but
right?
That's exactly what Brown did in the run-up to 1997. It's a very similar role, and I think you can see that very close working relationship that they've got, and I think it's why she's emerged as one of the most powerful figures in the shadow cabinet.
Does feel like that.
It's interesting, in focus groups now, you're starting to see her cut through much more. Now, 6 months ago, no one would have been able to tell you who she was, but now we get, every now and again, people like, oh, I quite like her, actually. I'd like to see a bit more of what she's got to offer, and I think she complements Starmer as well, and I think you know, Rachel Reeves on the one hand, Angela Rayner on the other, is starting to get this feeling that Labour is a bit more of a team, and perhaps you see that a bit less with the government, actually.
That's interesting. I love that as well. It's a good reminder to us that people don't really know who most politicians are as well. It's a good lesson to all of us. Thanks both for your analysis. Have more from you throughout the programme. Let's bring you up to date now, shall we, with some of the rest of the day's political news that's running on the Politics Hub. Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has spoken about his in-laws who are trapped in Gaza. His wife's parents, who live in Dundee, had travelled to Gaza to see his wife's sick grandmother, and he said that they were sick with worry about how the pair would get out and get home. He also issued an unequivocal condemnation of the Hamas attack.
My father-in-law and mother-in-law, who are from Scotland, live in Dundee, travelled to Gaza about a week ago, where my father-in-law's mother is 92 years old, frail, elderly. He went to visit her probably for the last time, and they're trapped in Gaza. And they're being told by the Israelis to leave Gaza. They're being told that Gaza will be effectively turned into rubble, but they have nowhere to go. They can't leave. Gaza is under blockade. And even with the assistance of the Foreign Office, they cannot guarantee any safe passage to any of the borders. And therefore, you can imagine my wife and I are sick with worry about whether or not, frankly, our parents, or my in-laws, will survive or not.
Now away from conference, Sky News understands that letters have been sent to the asylum seekers who are on board the Bibi Stockholm, telling them that they will be moved back onto the barge next week. 39 migrants were evacuated in August after Legionella bacteria was found in the water. And back here in Liverpool, Labour says it will radically overhaul the railway system by bringing railways back into public ownership. That's following the scrapping of the high-speed rail link from Birmingham to Manchester at last week's Conservative conference. The Shadow Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, pledged to set out a detailed vision for rail nationalisation in the coming weeks and months. Speaking at a Fringe event, she said that bringing our railways back into public ownership is where they've always belonged. Now, if you scan the QR code on screen, you can stay up to date with all of the latest on the Hub. Also, I want to tell you about our special programme on the Israel-Hamas war. That's presented by Mark Austin, live from Jerusalem, and that will be at 9 p.m. tonight, 9 o'clock tonight, here on Sky News. Coming up next on the Politics Hub.
Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free!
Pro-Palestinian protests and anti-Israeli chants outside Labour conference. An embarrassing echo of the party's historic failures over anti-Semitism, or an illustration of how far the leadership has come. We'll debate next.
Yeah, well, I've seen this.
Let's listen to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's speaking live in Tel Aviv.
The third action was to fortify the rest of the borders with the north with Hezbollah, in Judea and Samaria, and inside the country, and to hug our fighters, all the security people that have been working tirelessly in all of these fronts, risking their lives in order to protect the Israeli country. The fourth action was to continue the international support that I started gaining with the start of the war on Saturday to help us fight against our enemies. The final action, which for me is with top priority, is to solidify the unity in the country. We are now all united, and when we are united, we will win. The country is united, and now the management needs to unite. I'm calling the opposition leaders to immediately form a national unity government without any, just like happened with Menachem Begin at the start of the Six-Day War. citizens of Israel who started, and I emphasize, we just started to hit the Hamas. The images of the Hamas bases in Gaza is just the beginning. We have killed many terrorists, and this is not going to stop. I said that any place from which Hamas operates will turn into rubble. This is already happening today, and it will continue happening even more so. I am in constant communication with President Biden, and I would like to thank him on behalf of all citizens of Israel. The USA supporting Israel in every way, have a plane carrier, biggest in the area, is on its way to this area. And the enemies of Israel understand what that means. I would also like to thank many leaders in the world for their support in Israel. Citizens of Israel, I have to tell you, there's also some fake news and propaganda that is trying to separate us and scare us, such as the information that there are lots of tunnels, or the fake news that the Egyptian army, an Egyptian official has warned us about this, which has never happened before. Do not believe this propaganda. And the one thing that is most important in war is staying calm. I know we all want results right here, right now, but it will take some time. But I promise you, dear citizens, at the end of the war, all our enemies will know it was a terrible mistake to attack Israel. What we will do to our enemy in the next few days will echo for generations. Already, the battlefield is filled with heroic stories of our people, from the citizens, the policemen, the soldiers. I saw video of standing with his people after killing the terrorist. This is our spirit, standing strong together. I also watched a video of David, an army soldier whose child, he was out on the field and he saw the ceremony of the Brit on video. And when he heard the words from the ceremony, his eyes filled with tears. Yesterday, I appointed Gal Hirsch to be in charge of those abducted and missing. He has already begun his work, and we will do everything for them. Our heart is with the families of the abducted and with the families of those who have died. We have lost entire families, boys and girls, old men, old women, young and old, police and security, Jews and non-Jews. We are all sharing this. This is a true and honest thing. This is the deepest thing that connects us together. Together we will overcome, and together we will win. Only together. As Prime Minister of Israel, I'm telling you honestly, we are ahead of difficult days. We are hurting for our brothers and sisters who have died, and I insist on winning this battle in order to bring peace to our people and our country. The people of Israel, the country of Israel is a miracle. In the book of Samuel, it says that the unity of Israel will not lie. And during this journey, we will commit every promise, and this time we will also commit this promise, and the people of Israel will live.
The Israeli Prime Minister speaking there. We've just started, he said, it's just the beginning. He said, any place from which Hamas operates, we will turn to rubble. Then saying what we will do to our enemies in the next few days will echo throughout the generations. A speech there from the Israeli Prime Minister. Now, the events, of course, in Israel and Gaza have completely overshadowed this day of Labour conference. There has been a united consensus, though, from the party leadership to condemn the attacks by Hamas in the strongest possible terms. Now, that's inside conference. Outside, though, it was a slightly different story. Pro-Palestinian protesters gathered and chanted anti-Israeli slogans, while others, including, Sky News understands, at least one Labour Party member, shouted back at them. Well, let's pick up now with the columnist and writer Sonia Sodha and the UK director of More in Common, Luke Tryl. I just want to take a moment to reflect on what we've just heard from the Israeli Prime Minister. You know, we just talked to Darren Jones a moment earlier, who said that, yes, we believe Israel should have the right to defend itself, but that should be proportionate. And then hearing there, of course, from the Israeli Prime Minister, anywhere that Hamas operates from will be reduced to rubble, that we will now, what we will do to our enemies in the next few days will echo for the generations. I mean, this is such a difficult story. It feels like such a huge international moment.
Absolutely. This is the world's, longest-standing, most intractable conflict. And it has been very distressing, to see, and it will be especially distressing for members of the Jewish community here in the UK, members of the Palestinian community, to see look at what's happened over the last kind of 48 hours, scenes, that Hamas terrorist attack, which would have just been kind of unimaginable 24 hours before. And I think, listening to that speech by Benjamin Netanyahu, it does this is a war situation now. Israel has come under terrorist attack by an organisation, Hamas, who does not believe in its right to exist and wants to, obliterate the Jewish people. So obviously Israel has to defend itself. Obviously Hamas has made Gaza a legitimate target. And that is going to be incredibly grim for the millions of innocent Palestinian civilians, just as it has been awful for innocent Israeli citizens over the last 48 hours. It's just so terrible all round.
And I think, what you saw in that speech was, for Netanyahu, for Israel, this is bigger than just one conflict. This is a battle for the survival of Israel. As Sonia said, Hamas is a terrorist organisation that doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist, and is willing, as we've seen, to go to terrible atrocities in order to make its case. It's a deeply tragic situation that won't just reverberate in Israel, but around the Middle East, and of course back here in the UK as well. And I worry about the safety of Jewish communities in the UK.
It is certainly, I think that's something that's reflected by so many people as well. A very difficult, very grim story unfolding in Israel and in Gaza. Still to come on the Politics Hub. As the conflict escalates on both sides of the border, we'll be discussing more about how the West responds to the crisis in the Middle East.
We were planning this run for over a year, and then that was really essential and strategic for us, more than a commercial reason, because we are actually coming to London West End in a month, and we needed to actually finish our attack rehearsals, special lighting and sound. So in Mongolia, we don't have actual stage similar size theatre in Mongolia. Therefore, we went to Inner Mongolia to prepare in the similar stage theatre, but unfortunately it was banned, so we couldn't really finish our tech rehearsals.
So how did they stop the production? Did they pull the power, did they? Was that what you were saying?
Yes, the official reason was the electric cut, right? Yeah,
they said it's a power cut or something. Yeah, OK. And tell us a little bit about what the show is about. Why might the Chinese authorities feel that it's controversial?
So the play itself is set on 3,000 years ago, 3000 BC, and then it is happening around the Hunnu Empire, and then also like the ancestral empires called Skip and Pezeriks as well. And it is a fictional, it is not like truly based on historical events. So basically we were invited by Inner Mongolians, and then because especially Inner Mongolia is a home country of some majority of part of the Hunnu Empire, and then therefore many thousands of people actually came from different parts from Inner Mongolia to watch the show. Unfortunately, it was cut the electric power, and then also this like water drainage, like just a couple of hours before the show, which made it impossible for the audience to watch the show. And then also like without consulting with us, it was completely banned. announced as a ban. So the director actually wanted to say, using this opportunity, we would like to make one performance in London West End as free to Inner Mongolians who would like to come, who couldn't watch it. In recent years, like China was trying to control Mongolian language, especially in Inner Mongolia. So this year, they banned Mongolian language to be taught in schools, and then also like writing books as well. And then I think this play itself, it maybe, in my opinion, it could have a big influence to strike patriotism for those who were longing to be connected to Mongolia, because in Inner Mongolia, lots of people still consider themselves as Mongolians.
Hello and welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, world leaders have condemned Hamas in the strongest terms and repeatedly asserted Israel's right to defend itself. But what does that actually mean, and how far does that support go? Well, let's speak now, shall we, to our political editor, Beth Rigby, who is here in Liverpool for us. Beth, it does feel like one of those days where the world has just turned on its axis.
Yes, look, and we've heard from the Prime Minister at a private dinner tonight, calling the murder and kidnap of innocent civilians inhuman. He said it will not stand, terrorism will not prevail. He says Israel has an absolute right to defend itself, to defer further incursions, and he says that we're working with the Israel support authorities to support them. What does that support look like? Well, at the moment there is the offer of security support, diplomatic support, military support. Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, has also said tonight that the UK government is now reviewing its aid packages to Palestine. As I understand it, this will be done in conjunctions with other allies, not just unilaterally, but you can see now the beginnings of a coordinated response between different allies. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that the UK and the US have been in the front line in support for Israel. I expect in the coming hours and days what we will see is a ramping up of coordination between allies as they look to support Israel in their fight in the Gaza.
Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there, our political editor, reporting from Liverpool. So where are we then as we come to a close tonight? The second day of the Labour Party conference overshadowed by the situation unfolding in Israel and Gaza. Universal condemnation of the attacks from the front bench from a Labour Party keen to demonstrate a clean break from its failure to tackle anti-Semitism in the past. And of course, in Westminster, Parliament lit up with the colours of the Israeli flag. A difficult day, a devastating day. We'll have more from Israel and Gaza on Sky News this evening.